The first farmers were shorter than the people they replaced. Their teeth were worse. Their bones showed more signs of nutritional stress. They worked longer hours, got sicker often, and by almost every physical measure, they were doing worse than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. And they knew it, because some of those hunter-gatherers were their neighbors. So why did farming survive at all? That question has a real answer. And the real answer involves a climate disaster so severe that it nearly ended the whole experiment before it had a chance to matter. There's a specific moment, around 8,200 years ago, where agriculture came closer to disappearing than most people realize. And the reason it didn't disappear is honestly one of the stranger things I've come across. We'll get to it. First, a thing that doesn't get said clearly enough. Farming wasn't an obvious upgrade. When archaeologists started studying the skeletal remains of early Neolithic farmers, the first people to grow wheat and barley in the Fertile Crescent, they found a consistent pattern. Compared to the hunter-gatherers of the same region and roughly the same era, these early farmers were shorter by several centimeters. They had more enamel defects, which are physical markers of nutritional stress during childhood. They had more infectious disease. They had worse iron levels. The hunter-gatherers they lived alongside, and sometimes traded with, and sometimes fought, were eating a broader, richer diet. More variety, more protein, less dependence on a single crop that could fail. And yet, farming spread anyway. Slowly, messily, unevenly, but it spread. And that's the paradox that took researchers a long time to sit with. Why would a population voluntarily adopt a worse way of living? The answer, most likely, is that it wasn't really a choice. Here's the trap that farming creates. Once you start, your population grows. You're producing more calories per acre than a hunter-gatherer range can support. More people survive infancy. More people reach adulthood. The group gets bigger. And once the group is big enough, you can't go back. Because the wild resources that could have fed a band of 30 cannot feed a community of 300. You're locked in. The anthropologist Mark Cohen called it the food crisis thesis, the idea that farming didn't win because it was better, but because population pressure made it necessary. You crossed a threshold and the door closed behind you. That's not a metaphor. That's more or less what happened. So, by around 7000 BCE, farming communities were spreading across the Fertile Crescent. Places like Ain Ghazal in modern Jordan, one of the earliest large Neolithic towns ever found, were home to thousands of people. There were plastered skull caches and painted figurines and clear evidence of social complexity. Grain storage, trade. It was, by early Neolithic standards, a civilization in progress. And then, roughly 8,200 years ago, the climate broke. This is the part of the story that most farming documentaries skip entirely, which is a shame because it's genuinely alarming. Around 6200 BCE, two massive glacial lakes in what is now Canada, Lake Agassiz and Lake Ojibwe, catastrophically drained into the North Atlantic. We're talking about an enormous volume of fresh water flooding into the ocean in a geologically very short period of time. That fresh water disrupted the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, the ocean current system that carries heat from the tropics toward the North Atlantic and Europe. The result was rapid, dramatic cooling. Global temperatures dropped by roughly 1 to 3 degrees Celsius, in some regions possibly more. That might not sound like much, but for agricultural communities that had built their entire survival strategy around predictable growing seasons in a specific climate window, it was devastating. The event lasted around 160 years. 160 years of shorter growing seasons, longer droughts in some areas, more erratic rainfall in others. The Fertile Crescent, which had been unusually productive for centuries, became significantly less so. And the archaeological record shows what happened next. Sites were abandoned. Ain Ghazal's population collapsed. Settlements across the northern Fertile Crescent showed disruption layers right around this period. The communities that had committed to grain agriculture were suddenly farming in a climate that didn't support what they'd built their lives around. Some groups moved, some contracted, some probably dissolved entirely. And here's the thing that gets me. This was only about 2,000 years into the agricultural experiment. Farming hadn't been around long. It hadn't diversified widely. It hadn't yet produced the surplus systems or the institutional knowledge to absorb a multi-generational climate collapse. If the 8.2K event had been more severe or lasted 3 centuries instead of 1.5, it's genuinely possible that these communities would have been wiped out before agriculture had the chance to embed itself into human culture irreversibly. There's a version of this story where farming fails, where the population crashes hard enough that the survivors, scattered, smaller, no longer anchored to their fields, revert to the foraging strategies their grandparents remembered, where the momentum simply stops. That version didn't happen, but it nearly did. What actually happened, and this is the part I mentioned at the start, the part I didn't expect, is that the survivors doubled down. Actually, before I keep going, if you're someone who finds yourself genuinely curious about what daily life looked like for these ancient populations, I want to mention something. There's a book I worked on called 24 Hours with Ancient Humans. It follows a single day inside the lives of our hunter-gatherer ancestors, hour by hour, from the 4:30 a.m. biphasic sleep window through to the late-night fire storytelling that researchers now think was central to how early humans built social trust. It's not a history textbook. It's more like, what did they actually smell like? How did they eat? How did they settle disputes without courts or kings? If that sounds like your kind of rabbit hole, the link's in the description. Back to the aftermath of the 8.2K collapse. The communities that survived the cooling event didn't return to foraging at scale. Remember the trap. Their populations, even reduced, were still too large to be supported by wild resources that had themselves been disrupted by the same climate shift. Foraging wasn't a safety net anymore. The door really had closed. So they adapted to agriculture instead. There's evidence of post-8.2K farming communities developing better water management strategies, early irrigation features, site relocations toward more reliable water sources, shifts in which crops were prioritized. They also moved. Some Neolithic farming populations migrated into Europe during and after this period, spreading agriculture westward into a slightly more stable climate. That migration is now detectable in ancient DNA. In other words, the crisis didn't end farming, it stress-tested it. And the version that came out the other side was more resilient, more geographically spread, and paradoxically more entrenched in human life than before. Remember at the start I mentioned that the early farmers were shorter, sicker, working harder than the foragers they were replacing? Here's the part that makes that strange. The 8.2K event made that worse, not better. The post-collapse Neolithic communities were under more nutritional stress, not less. They were more dependent on their grain stores, more vulnerable to crop failure, more settled into a mode of living that was individually harder on the human body. And the population kept growing anyway. That's the thing about the agricultural trap that I keep coming back to. It wasn't good for individuals. It was catastrophically good for groups. And groups are what survived. There's something quietly unsettling about that if you let yourself sit with it. The entire shape of human civilization, cities, writing, specialization, empire, everything descends from a decision that wasn't really a decision. A threshold crossed, a door closed, and then a climate disaster that should have ended the whole thing but instead just accelerated it. The farming experiment almost failed forever, and the reason it didn't was the same reason it probably shouldn't have started. Once enough people were committed to it, stopping wasn't survivable. I don't think that resolves cleanly. I'm not sure it's supposed to. If this is the kind of thing you find yourself still thinking about an hour from now, there's more of it here.